Dear participants, I welcome all of you in this lecture on programming in Python. I will discuss functions in Python in today's lecture. So just to revise what we have discussed in last class, we have seen decision making constructs such as if, else if, nested if, if and if, elif, else, and so on. So we have seen different constructs of decision making. We discussed for loop and how can we access data present in a list, or you could set tuple using for loop. Similarly, we have seen how we can access while loop as well, and then nested loops as well. So we had discussed all these in last class. And in today's lecture, we'll discuss function and its related concepts. But before going to function, I will discuss exercise on loop and decision makings. I have already told you I have given certain exercises in last lecture, and among those I want to discuss one exercise. Let's say you want to find whether a given number is prime or not. So what is a prime number? Prime number is a number which is divisible by 1 and the number itself only. Other than, if it is being divided by other number other than 1 and the number itself, then that number is not a prime number. So how we will proceed it? So suppose you need to find whether, let me select pen first. So suppose we need to find whether a number n is prime or not. So what we will do? We will start from 2 to n minus 1, and we will divide all divide n. We will take modulo of n with these numbers 2, 3 and till n minus 1. If it is divisible by any number between 2 to n minus 1, it means this number n is not a prime number. So our intention will be to start dividing from 2 to n minus 1. If it is divisible by any number between 2 to n minus 1, then that number is not a prime number. So in this way we will proceed. And you can also take from 2 to n minus 1, instead of n minus 1, we can also consider square root 2 to square root of n and so on. So you can run your loop from 2 to n minus 1 or 2 to square root of n. The result would remain same. If it is already well proved that if a number is divisible between 2 to square root of n, then that number is not a prime number. Similarly, if a number is not divisible between 2 to square root of n, it means that number is a prime number. So by giving this background, now we will start to write Python code. Let me connect IDE. So now here I am opening a new file, and first I will save it and will give it a name. Let's say test. And yes, so what you need to do, first you have to select a number. Yes, configure. First let me configure this one so that I can increase the size of font. Yeah, okay. So what I will do here, I will first take input from the user. N is equal to int. Why I am using int? I need to typecast this input data from the user. So let me write enter a number to check for prime, whether that number is prime or not, right? So that is the input function. Okay. Now what I will do, I will try to write a for loop here for I in, and what is the task here? I have to make a list or make a sequence of numbers between 2 to n minus 1, right? So for that purpose, I will use range functions, right? Range function, range 2 to n plus 1. Why I am taking n plus 1? Since, sorry, not n plus 1, n. So it will give me a number between 2 to n, that is, so let's say n, someone enters n as 7. So it gives me a number 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 only, right? So now what I will do, if this is divisible by any number between 2 to n minus 1, so it means this number is not a prime number, right? So I will use print the entered number is not a prime, right? And what I will do, I will come out of this loop. So I will write here break, so that it can terminate it here. I do not suppose if I find that after first or second or third iteration that this number is not a prime, so I will exit it. There is no need to go again and again to whole range, right? And if it is, I discussed a special loop, that is for else loop, in last class. So the purpose of for else loop is, if for loop terminates naturally, it means there is no any early termination, then in that case else will be executed. Let's say my number is prime number, right? So what would happen? Whole range will be accessed, right? All the numbers between 2 to n, that will be accessed. So it means my for loop is executed normally, right? So else will be executed in that scenario. When there is no early termination, then only else will be executed. So I would write here print the entered number and number is prime, right? So that's it. So it's very simple program where we are checking whether it number is prime or not. Let me execute this one and see the result of this particular program. So what I need to do, enter a number to check for prime. Suppose I am entering 27. So 27 is not a prime number since it is divisible by 3. So entered number is not a prime. Now let me again execute, and I will, at this time, I will give 31, right? So the entered number is prime. So in this way you can write this program. So it is very important, why I am giving indentation. I have already told you, if you need to identify a block in Python, then you have to use indentation. So this is not a proper way of writing else loop, since I have not given indentation. So it is giving me this error, expected and intended block after else statement online. So it is not letting me execute this program, right? So that's why you need to do execute this print, indentation. One thing more, this else is part of for loop, not part of else loop. So this is not the correct, it is, syntactically this program is correct, but what would happen? Logically it is not correct. It will not give you the correct result, right? Why so? Because suppose if a number is let's say 9, okay, so what would happen in this case? 9 will be divided by 2, right? So it won't give 0, right? So else it will come in else part, and then the entered number is prime. So it is saying that the entered number is prime. So it is very important that I am using else with for loop, not with the else loop. I hope it is clear to all of you. Let me open presentation now. So we have seen an exercise on loop and decision making. Now we'll introduce you function and certain basic concepts of function and how parameters and arguments are passed, how arguments are actually passed to the function. So how will you define function? So a function is a organized block of code designed to carry out a distinct related task. Let's say the task is suppose to find whether an integer number is prime or not. So this is the task, and the similar the Python code that I have written, the same functionality can also be performed using function. So I will show you how can modify in the previous Python program to accommodate function, right? Or you could say how we can write function to find whether a number is prime or not. So very soon I will try to show you. Alternatively, a function can be described as a collection of instructions that accept some input, executes a particular task, or you could say set of instructions, and then produces some output. So actually a very simple definition of a function. You give certain input to function and it will process according to the input, and it will give you some output, and that output can be part of input to some other function, and it can already be and it can be displayed to the monitor and so on, and it can be stored to the file as well. So this is the basic definition of functions. What are the advantages of functions? Acts as a building block for the program. So just like variable declaration, similarly function can also be a building block of the program. The best part of the function is the best part with the function is that it can be reused. So once you have written a function, then you can repeatedly use it in your program. Let's say I have make a function to some n numbers. So I can repeatedly use throughout my program, and I can repeatedly call this function. Let's say I have developed a function for finding a square root of a number. So I can repeatedly use throughout the program. It improves clarity of code. Obviously, when when you write a Python program without the function, without the user-defined function, so the code would be very bulky, right? And it would be not easy to understand the whole program. And if you are dividing whole program into different functions, then it would be easily understandable, right? So functions support the divide and conquer strategy. So you can divide your program into different sub program, or you could say functions, and in this way individual components can be solved, can be written. So it is so functions support the divide and conquer strategy. Now function can be categorized into two different categories: built-in functions and user-defined functions. So the standard functions that are provided by Python that we have seen, like input, print, so these are built-in functions. User-defined function, the programmer can define its own function, and like in this case, this is the programmer-defined functions. Let me use the pen. So this is the programmer-defined function. So you are defining a function using the keyword def, and this is the name of the function, and you are writing code for that. So this is the function, actually user-defined function. How we write functions? So we start with def, right, and then function name. You could select any function name, and then this one is the parameter list of parameters, and here function suite, or you could say statements or code, line of code or line of statements. Then there is a return statement, a return, and suppose you have calculated something and you want to return. Suppose you have checked whether a number is prime or not, and you want to return with true or false whether that number is prime or not. Or you could say you are returning square root of a number. So in this way you can return certain values. So this is the general syntax of a function. And as far as whole program with function is concerned, so how we use a function? So first we need to define the function, right? Suppose you are creating user defined function, like in this case, in the previous lecture slide I told you. So this is the definition of the function, but it need to be called from some part of the program. So there should be some calling a function. Calling a function, it means you actually want to call this function. So you have to include function call. So these are certain basic parts. So first you need to define the function, and then you need to call that function. And in function you can pass certain elements in the form of arguments, right? Suppose I need to find whether a number n is prime or not. So n would be argument in this case. So or there may be some situation where there is no need of argument. You are just calling a function without argument. So that is also possible. Similarly, parameter is a variable in a method definition. So where you are defining the method, that I have shown you how you can define the function. So during the definition of the function, you actually pass the parameter. Again, this could be option depending on the situation of the problem and the problem in which you are working. Like in this case, so this is the function definition, this is the parameter, function parameter, and here you are calling the function. This is the function call, right? And this is the argument, right? So in this way you can define. So what it will do, in this case it is calling the function again depending on the value of x, right? Now there is an exercise. Write a Python function to calculate the factorial of a number, right? And write a Python function to calculate the sum of digits of a given number. So now you will be able to write a function. Let me write a function to check whether to calculate the factorial of a number. I'm here writing code for this particular exercise, right? Let me open the IDE. So I'm writing here enter a number to find factorial, right? So I will declare a variable here, fact as a 1, okay? And then factorial, it means if you need to find out factorial of 4, suppose. So 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So any number, if you need to find out factorial of any number, so the number, let's say n. So the factorial of n is n into n minus 1 into n minus 2 into n minus 3 and so on 1. Or you can say, so factorial of n is 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 and so on into n. So that is the factorial. So what I will do here for, again I will try to find out all the numbers between 1 to n, right? So I will write here for I in range 1 comma n plus 1. Now in this case I will consider n plus 1. Why so? Because the higher bound is actually, it will give me a number, a sequence of number from 1 to n in this case. So 1 to n. Now factorial is equal to factorial into 1. So what it will do, at very first run, factorial will be factorial into 1, right? And then in the second run I will be 2. So factorial would be 1 into 2. Similarly, next run, in third run, factorial will be factorial 1 into 2 into 3 and so on, right? In this way, the factorial will be calculated. So what I will write, print factorial of the number n is fact, right? So let me execute this one. Let's say 5. So factorial number, it is not correct. Let me check what is happening here. So sorry, it's not 1, it's I actually. Sorry. I'm again executing this one. So let's say 5. So now it is fine. 5 into 4 into 3 into 2, right? So in this way you can calculate the factorial. It's not correct. It should be factorial, right? It's not factorial. It's actually factorial. Yes. Then now execute this one. Enter a number to find factorial. So let's say 6. So factorial of 6 is centempty. So 6 into 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So in this way you can calculate the factorial. But the question was to write if function. I'm using the user defined function. So I need to solve this particular problem using the user defined function. So let's say I will write def factorial of number, and the user will provide n, right? So I'm here writing number, and let's say user will you will provide fact underscore num, and this function will be called, right? Now I will write fact is equal to 1, and for, let me copy this one. So I'm copying this one, and for I in range 1 to n plus 1, fact is equal to, and then return fact, right? And that's it. Let me erase this one, and I'm storing factorial is equal to. So in this way you can write this function. So first of all, this line will be executed, this one, and it would demand a number. Now once I will provide that number, then this function will be called, where I am supplying this number as an argument, right? Then this function will be called, and this will be passed as a parameter, and similarly I am returning the value, returning the fact, and this after returning, once this will be executed, so the factorial will be stored in factorial in this variable. Now let me print this one, print factorial of the enter number is factorial is the variable, right? Factorial, that's it. So in this way I can write function. So enter factorial, so let's say 5. So it is giving me factorial, the enter number is 120. In this way you can write the function, and it is very important. One thing is important here. If you are writing function, again the statements under function should be properly indented, like in this case. So I cannot write in this way. This is not the correct way of writing function, because the how the function will identify the block of the code under this function. So this is not correct, right? So to write a correct function, I need to properly intend it. intended my statement under function. So this is the way you can write the function. Let me come to the presentation presentation slide. So we have seen how we can solve this particular problem using function. So to summarize what we have discussed till now, we have seen we introduce you to function, and we have seen how the syntax of function, and we have also seen how a function can return a value, right? So we discuss all these using an example, using an exercise. So I'm stopping here. We'll discuss remaining part of function in next lecture. Thank you so much.